This is Public Report, a public affairs presentation of KTBW. The opinions expressed in this program does not necessarily reflect the views of the Trinity Broadcasting Network.
Good morning and welcome to Public Report. I'm your host, Latasha Raines. Just a few days ago, we celebrated our nation's independence, but unfortunately, not everyone in our country is living free. Today's topic is modern-day slavery called human trafficking. Today's guests, we have Phil Martin, the National Director of the campaign of Compassion2one, and we have the missions pastor from the City Church and representative for A21, Joanne Ramos. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So, Joanne, I want to start with you. Please share with us what your role is with A21.
At this point, I'm just a volunteer, and our church is very involved in partnering with A21 and what they're doing in Eastern Europe in regards to human trafficking. So I'm probably just, my role would be just be activist, personal activist, and volunteer with raise awareness regarding the issue.
Can you share a little bit with us what A21's actual mission is?
Yeah, A21 is based primarily at this time in Thessaloniki, Greece, and we just opened a transitional house in Sofia, Bulgaria. And for that part of the world, 200,000, which is a huge amount, of young girls and children are being trafficked across Europe. And so 8 years ago, Christine Kane and her husband Nick were at an airport and saw signs, posters put up everywhere about children being trafficked and sold, or missing actually, and she got curious about what it was about and found out that these were children and women that from primarily Eastern Bloc countries were being trafficked into Greece, and from there trafficked all over the world. And so when she realized that and saw that, she realized that something needs to be done. Something needs to stop this. And so their mission there is 4 things, really. The first thing is to educate, to raise awareness. Second thing is to protect the girls, to make a way for them to be rescued and protected. The third thing is to prosecute those who are trafficking them. And then the fourth thing is to partner with other organizations and other NGOs and churches that are doing the same thing in that area.
Excellent. Phil, you are the National Director of Compassion2one. Share with us what your role is, well, as the director, and what the mission is of Compassion2one.
Sure. Some of my responsibilities include just raising awareness like this on television in schools and churches, various places throughout the community. We also do trainings, which you'll hear about a little bit more here in the program. So we train law enforcement, first responders, social service workers, pastors, counselors, just various people groups from the community. We're involved in helping to stop demand, so we're working with men and preventative efforts to stop men from buying sex from girls. We help with policy and legislation. We work with a lot of the lawmakers here within Olympia, Washington State, and also with direct services to victims, to survivors, and in the area of aftercare housing. So those are some of the things that we do. Mostly what I'm in charge of is a lot of the daily operations of the organization, so I oversee all of our volunteers, all of our web development, all of our trainings, just a lot of the different components I mentioned. I oversee most of that, but mostly I do the awareness piece, so I'm going to different places to try to help activate people throughout the community. And some of how the organization got started, Steve and Julie Gutzler, who are our founders, they took a lot of mission trips overseas to different countries, saw different needs throughout different places around the world, and started to raise money for some of those causes. And so they came across human trafficking, child prostitution, in some different nations overseas. And so that's really how we got started, was just based off of their experiences being pastors and missionaries around the world. And just over the last couple of years, we've switched to going more domestic and trying to do a lot of what I just mentioned here.
Excellent. A lot of people are probably wondering, what exactly is trafficking? I heard you define it just a little bit, but can you elaborate on what that is?
Human trafficking is really the ownership of an individual for making a profit of sex and money. And so people who are going to school, just girls who are going to school, they're in different parts of the community and churches, different places. These girls come from vulnerable situations. Some of them even come from good families. They come from all types of backgrounds across the nation, around the world. A lot of reasons why it happens is extreme poverty, government corruption, just lack of opportunities for them in certain parts of the nation. And so that brings them to a place where they're vulnerable to traffickers. And so these guys who are buying, they are part of organized crime organizations and organized crime and so forth, gangs. But a lot of these guys are average everyday guys. They're school principals, they're church pastors, they're people who are entrusted to our kids that work in law enforcement or wherever. And so these are people who we trust our kids to, that are actually buying, they're doing the everyday buying. And so our job is to help raise awareness more about that, to help give people a perspective that this actually happens more than you realize.
I'll ask either one of you guys, but what is the main area of focus in this issue? I mean, this is just a horrible thing that's happening here.
Probably prevention would be the greatest thing. You know, statistics are that every 30 seconds someone is sold. That's crazy. So we've been sitting here for 5 minutes, and 10 girls have been sold in that amount of time, or children, across the border somewhere. So the statistics are crazy. They estimate there's over 27 million, and that's probably a low estimate, million people in slavery, some kind of slavery right now across the world. And what a sadder statistic is that less than 1–2% are being rescued, just because of the nature of the beast, if you will. So probably the greatest thing that we feel like we're focusing on at A21, and I think probably a lot of organizations are, is the prevention. Okay, so if the statistics are so low in the rescue, we're not giving up on the rescue, but what we want to focus on is the prevention. So education and prevention are probably the two greatest things. And it's done a lot of ways, like for instance by the show, it's done by educating, it's done by public events. There's a lot of programs now that are going into public high schools here in America, but A21 is also doing that all over Europe, from England all the way down to Greece, going into public high schools, going on to university campuses. Because like Phil said, you know, we look at girls in the sex industry and we think they're there by choice. A minute % are actually there by choice. And by raising awareness and equipping the young women and the young men ahead of time is one thing that we believe was probably the greatest key to lowering it and stopping it. And I also love what Phil said that they're doing about educating men. Because if there was no market, Latasha, there'd be no people bought and sold. So when men realize that they're buying someone else's children, and I think that raising that awareness is a huge part too.
Can we talk about the profile of a victim? It sounds like these could be just everyday girls. I mean, they're not necessarily from a bad situation. Maybe talk about the profile of someone when we're talking about prevention as well.
I'll give a good example, more of a domestic situation. One of the girls that we recently brought to our attention, she was a student at a school here in Tacoma. And so just an average, normal, everyday girl going to school. And so something new that's been happening recently is a lot of these guys who are older, in their mid-30s, 40s, 50s, they're actually paying off guys who are 14, 15 years old to go into schools and be spotters. And so this is just an everyday girl going to school. She did have some family issues, obviously, in her life. So it's girls who come from broken families and that are at risk, but it's also girls who come from wealthy families, because what these guys really want is the money. They want the influence. They want the power over this girl. So if they can get right to the money, they can still give threats to people like that just as much as they can give to someone who comes from an at-risk situation. So it just really depends on how fast they want the cash and the positioning of where they're at in the world. So we see girls come from both ends of the spectrum. But this girl that was in the school, she was just going to school. This guy spotted her. He started to build what we call a trauma bond, and basically trying to build a relationship with this girl to lure her into a life of prostitution, and just to gain her trust, and making promises to her, buying her things, becoming basically a provider to this girl, because she probably never had a dad or a brother or someone in her life, a positive male role model. So they lured this girl to an undisclosed location in Tacoma and sold her to 3 or 4 different men. And over the course of 2 days, she had serviced a number of different men here just in South King County, Pierce County. And they found her under a bridge 2 days later with another 13-year-old girl, and got her some services that she needed. And how that whole case got turned around was the guy that was 15 in the school had the mother's cell phone. We never see this happen, rarely do we ever see this happen, where a guy feels bad for what he did, called the police, called the mom, they found the girl, and that's how the police found her, under the bridge. And so we got her the services. So it really can be girls from at-risk situations or girls that are just average, everyday girls.
So we talked about, prevention, and that is just, wow, hearing that story is is heartbreaking. However, you guys are making some huge strides to prevent these kind of things from happening. Can you share, either one of you specifically, maybe what each of your organizations are doing to prevent things such as these?
One of the things we are doing, like I mentioned, is we're going into schools, high schools, and in the Eastern Europe and in Asia, poverty is such a huge thing, and it also is an issue here in America. Low income, one-parent homes, a lot of needs aren't being met. With an iPod or with an iPhone, you can almost buy a young girl's affection, unfortunately. But one of the things that we found is that by going into schools, by getting into public places, by raising that kind of awareness and giving them that kind of information about what this looks like. They look like they love you. You're 13 years old. The average age of a young girl in prostitution and being trafficked is 13 to 15 years old. And so to even just equip them, the fact of he looks like he loves you, he looks like he's buying you something, but the truth is his designs on you are for something totally different. And to plant that information in them, so when they're encountered by that, for them to be aware and to be able to resist or to seek the help that they may need to be relieved from that.
And on the male side, what type of preventative or informative information are you doing to help with that?
Yeah, we've found we're doing a lot within the schools, a lot within the prison systems where these guys do end up. We're trying to stiffen the penalties and the fines for that too. So we work some within the prisons, but recovery-based programs for men and for families. We've found a few that work with church groups or that work with different areas of the community or work with law enforcement, John schools, different places like that. So we work with the men, but also in the area of awareness, we do that. But I'd say one of the greatest things that our organization does is actually our trainings. To give someone the information that they need, and we take them through 8 to 9 hours, usually 2 to 3 times a month on some occasions, just depending, to give them information they can take for themselves and to their families and different people in their community. This is actual tangible material that they can share, and it's not just sparking interest, but it's actually giving everyday tangible tools that they can recognize girls, they can recognize the guys, they can recognize places that it happens throughout the community. So it's very tangible, and so I'd say that's probably one of our greatest strengths.
And what type of people would go to this training? Or is it just volunteers, or are people that are kind of like seeing eye dogs, or what's the? Yeah,
originally we started with the law enforcement, social service workers, first responders, those 3 groups, because they were initially working directly with the victims and their families. But recently, when we do an awareness event, we get so much interest from people who want more information. They really want to know tangibly how they can make a difference. So we've started to break off our training a little bit and create different types of trainings for pastors and counselors and people who work in foster care, different groups. And so we just found that to be a great need. So we've customized different trainings for those groups of people. So really we get, probably 75 to 100 people on an average training. It's a pretty decent number. And we partner with different groups here. One's the Genesis Project and CTAC, who's very well known around here. So we do it, I think, very well, and people are very receptive to what we do, and it's helping.
Where can someone go to get involved in these trainings or to volunteer or be a part of either one of your organizations?
For us, we go to our website, just www.compassion2one.org. You can find all the information there about our trainings.
Say that one more time.
www.compassion2one.org, compassion2one.org. And you can go there, you can find information about our awareness events, our trainings, our organization, get involved that way. So that'd probably be the best way, or our Facebook page or our Twitter.
And your
Ours
website?
is www.a21campaign.org. A21 stands for Abolishing Injustice in the 21st Century, and there's 21 ways to be involved.
Sorry to interrupt you. Thank you so much for sharing. We'll be back and talking more about human trafficking, our next segment. I'm your host, Latasha Raines, and you're watching Public Report.
Search for my significance, seems the more I disappear. And I wonder, have I made a difference in anybody's life since I've been here? I can hear your laughter, it's the sweetest sound I've ever known. I don't know how love happens, but I know I'm not alone. And I still have faith in you.
devotion. Pass it on.
Welcome back to Public Report. We are in our second segment talking about human trafficking. I'm your host, Latasha Raines. In this second segment, we actually have new guests with us. We have Krista Gibbons, and she is the National Training Director for Compassion2one. We also have Velma Veloria, and she's a former Washington State Representative and co-chair at UW Women's Center Task Force Against Human Trafficking. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
First, Krista, if you could share with us a little bit what your role is and what it means to be a training director for Compassion2one.
Right. So I am the Regional Awareness Training Director for Compassion2one. And basically my role is to be out within the community. As Phil mentioned earlier, we do partner with the Genesis Project and other like-minded organizations. And our main goal is just to provide awareness and prevention. So we do a lot of trainings within school systems. We do trainings within the prison systems. I've recently gotten into some juvenile facilities to do some trainings with the kids there. So it's really just about empowering and trying to instill in a lot of the kids and adults, how to protect their children and for kids to protect themselves. It's a growing issue, so we need to all work together to stop it.
Excellent. And Velma, what is your role at the task force?
Well, first of all, I wanted to tell you that as a former state representative, I was the one who introduced the issue of human trafficking to the Washington State Legislature. Wow, what an honor to meet you. I sponsored the first piece of legislation to make human trafficking a crime in our state. At the University of Washington Women's Center, we've done several things. One was we held the first statewide human conference on human trafficking in 2001. And this coming year, we hope to, in 2013, we are organizing an international conference based on what has been happening, bringing people from abroad, particularly in Asia, and have some sort of what we call best practices to try to figure out what's happening in different parts of the world, and then take a look at what's best practices, and then go from there. Take a look at prevention and then also causes.
Can you, either one of you, share a little bit? We know that this is a national and even an international issue, but let's kind of bring it home to Washington where our viewing audience is. Can you share with us maybe some statistical information or the facts that are what's happening here in Washington State?
So for us, in terms of nationally, there's, I think, more than 600,000 people being trafficked into Washington, into the United States. And because we have what I call the ports, they bring in people. We have the Port of Seattle. We have like 5 airports. We also have an international border with Canada. So there are many different ways that people come. And for us, it's not just an issue of sex trafficking, but also an issue of what we call forced labor. So people in agriculture, in the Asian American community, we see forced labor also, like in hair salons, people that do your nails, and your pedicures, and people that cut your hair, many of them are also trafficked. In the cultural industry, it's in the agricultural industry, they're, of course, farm workers. And, sometimes when you see the people that are selling fruits on the side of the street, sometimes we kind of also take a look at that and say, are these people trafficked or not?
So if a person is trafficked, do they have a way to get out of that beyond the sex trafficking, which you're talking about more of labor related? How can they step away from that and actually benefit from this country being a free country?
How can they step away? Well, I think that's where our organization plays a role, is just trying to connect those people, identifying the risk, identifying the kids that need help, and really having our eyes open to see situations where a person selling fruit on the side of the road may be somebody that's in danger, that's being harbored or held captive, and they're not there by choice. And so to recognize that, intervene, and help them to get into services. We've partnered with several organizations and are partnering at a rapid pace right now to just develop those relationships so that we have a wide variety of service providers that can really help the multiple levels of trauma that are taking place in victims.
And some people step away by choice because they can no longer take it. So they find a way to escape, and then they need to know that there are people like Compassion2one that they can go to. So like in the Asian American community, there's the Asian Pacific Islander Chaya, which provides services of traffic victims to, you know, many of the Asian American victims.
So on a legislative level, have you found that it's tough to actually, you know, pass or bring about new laws regarding this?
So when I first put it forward, I had to do all sorts of education work. First of all, the issue was around mail order bride. I don't know if you remember, there were these 3 Filipino-American women that were murdered at the King County Courthouse. When we initially looked at that issue, we looked at it as a domestic violence issue. But the people from the grassroots kept saying, wait a minute, take a look at it, right? One woman in particular, Emma Katagi, who also does what the services, they looked at it and they said, you know, there's a pattern. Before the bill came out, there were 3 mail order bride issues in the state of Washington. One of them was a woman who was Anastasia King from Kyrgyzstan that was murdered at the university, you know, who was a student at the university. So the Washington state has actually taken the lead in putting forward pieces of legislation. We have 28 pieces. Once the education work, like what everybody has been talking about, the issue of education and awareness had been done, then people just jumped right on to making sure that legislation to punish the perpetrators happened.
What type of things are you implementing towards these, you know, people that are attacking these women or drawing them into this type of lifestyle?
Well, one of them in particular was brought forward by the mayor of Seattle. I don't know if you remember the whole issue of Backpage.com. And so they were advertising women that were underage. So we made it illegal for, you know, for Backpage.com to do that. And then they have challenged it and said this is a First Amendment right. So there's going to be a hearing, I think, on July 20th, that I think people who might be interested in this issue might want to come and listen. They're going to probably be discussing this bill regarding the Backpage.com.
Outside of volunteering with organizations such as yours, what can we do down in, let's say, Olympia to make our presence a little more known regarding this issue? Because I think, you know, when there's more people, they tend to pay attention more and become more active.
So January 11th is National Human Trafficking Awareness Day. And I think every year people go there to, you know, lobby their legislators. Then the other thing is basically just sitting down with each and every single legislator and letting them know about it.
Bringing it forth, bringing it to their attention so they know what's going on. I mean, that's been one thing that I've noticed, is that even some law enforcement agencies where I personally know some of the officers, still there's this lack of knowledge of what the issue is and how big it really is in South King County, how big it is in our area. So it's important for everybody to get there and listen and learn.
What are some of the specific things that you use in your training? I'm interested to hear about that because, you know, people might think it's just regular awareness, but I'm sure there's some specific things that you guys implement in your program to be successful. Right.
So we do an advanced training, which just gives you knowledge of the issue, because a lot of people, they hear DMST, they don't know what that means, domestic minor sex trafficking. Some of those forms can be prostitution, pornography, stripping. They say stripping is a gateway into prostitution. So we do train on that aspect, how get recruited into prostitution, how they are recruited off the street, your runaway youth, you're approached within 48 hours by a pimp. 1 out of 3 teens is running away. Within that 24 to 48 hours of being approached. So we just bring that awareness, and then I also do, I've created several new trainings. So we're training at-risk youth that maybe are more vulnerable. So we're training vulnerable populations, and then we're also getting into the entertainment industry. We're getting into working with politicians and law enforcement. We train on complex trauma. There's a multitude of trainings that we're working on trainings to work with the men. You know, we are working with a mentoring program for men that are buying sex or have trafficked girls. So just to educate them so that they really understand what they're doing and the trauma that's inflicted.
So the University of Washington actually also had a training that focused on the legal aspect of it. It was a continuing legal education training for folks that were that were involved or were even wanting it. And actually, the University of Washington put together this training program and provided credit for that training. So so that's another way of trying to get people in. And for us, it's also to when we talk about prostitution and human trafficking, we begin to take a look at it as forced labor, because for us, prostitution is forced labor. It's not just the women becoming prostitutes, but that they really had no way of knowing where they were going to be pushed.
Right.
What options or what opportunities are available for women who are coming out of this lifestyle? We've talked a lot about what the issue is and prevention, but if a woman's coming out of this or a forced labor worker is coming out of this, what are the options and opportunities there? Well,
I know specifically one of the girls that I've worked with personally, very exciting. She was actually in the life from the age of 13. She's 19 now. And we were able, through the Genesis Project, kind of the first of its kind drop-in center, and because that center was there and she was able to build up trust with the people that are working at that center, we were able to get her into some services that really stuck for her. And she's been through, with the Orion Center, she's done a barista training program, she's done job skills training, and she's working on transitional housing right now and really, really on her way at getting out of the life. So, these trainings do make sense. They do work, and the girls that are receiving the services, this isn't just a hopeless cause because it's so huge. There are girls that are really getting help and changing their lives. And she's a testimony. She's working on accepting Christ, and she's working on just securing a life for herself where she can really be productive and have some joy.
For those that are brought over from another country, one of the struggles that we have is that we need to make sure that they are able to stay once they get out, that they are not deported back to their own country, that they have an opportunity to be here in the United States and help turn their lives around. So one of the pieces that we're looking at in terms of legislation in the federal government is to make sure that they have access to some sort of immigration reform programs.
So that way, is there like a transitional period once they're rescued that, the government can't just ship them back?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking forward to.
Right.
Is there a website or anything, especially legislatively, that people can go to kind of follow through with what's going on, what you're working on?
Oh, the website, you can just go to the University of Washington Women's Center website, and I think and then press in human trafficking, and you'll get there.
And one more time quickly, the Compassion2one website?
Compassion2one, www.compassion2one.org, compassion2one.org.
Thank you so much, ladies, for being here. We're now ending our segment on human trafficking on Public Report. I'm your host, Latasha Raines, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
You've been watching Public Report, a public affairs presentation of KTBW. The opinions expressed in this program does not necessarily reflect the views of the Trinity Broadcasting Network.